Hello and welcome to this edition of the BSN Long Story Short. My name is Tim Bailey and I'm in charge of BSN's international business. And in this episode, we're going to talk about the linkage between cloud services and blockchain technology. Blockchain is a disruptive technology that is increasingly being adopted in various industries. Cloud computing is also a very hot topic in the IT industry, but sometimes is criticized for having flaws like centralization and lack of trust. So we think that blockchain technology could add both security and transparency to cloud computing with some of the key features like decentralization and immutability. So in this webinar, we're going to discuss current state of cloud computing and how blockchain technology could impact the cloud computing industry. So what I'd like to first do is welcome our panelists. We have a distinguished group of panelists today, and I'd like to invite each of them one by one to introduce themselves and the company they work for and what they're doing. So David Song, let me start with you.
Thank you, Tim. Hello everyone. Here, I'm David, coming from the Amazon Web Services. Now a solutions architect here, covering the fintech territory, mostly crypto exchange in the regions, virtual banks, or some payment services company here. It's our honor to be here to share a little bit of our observations because during the engagement with our customers, there's a lot of conversations about blockchain's technology applying on their domain. Yeah.
Great. Ken?
Yeah, Ken Huang. I'm CEO of Distributed Apps. My company do the blockchain consulting and especially on the security for the big banks like World Bank and also some small startup in the gaming NFT DeFi project, mostly on the security aspect. Meanwhile, I'm chair of the blockchain security working group with the Cloud Security Alliance. It is a great China region. So we publish quite a few white papers on the blockchain security. Thanks.
Good. Great to have you. Robert?
Hi, everyone. I'm the CEO and co-founder at CloudSigma. We're a Swiss company, and we have a global network of infrastructure as a service and platform as a service locations, which are enabled through local service providers. So we basically have a global network of local service providers that offer cloud services directly into those markets, and that enables them to provide local sovereignty and data protection and performance benefits of having an in-country solution.
Great. Hazem?
Hi, everyone. My name is Hazem Sandouka. I am the Chief Operations Officer of Virtual Vision. Virtual Vision is a public cloud provider in Saudi Arabia. We provide public cloud services such as infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and obviously blockchain as a service.
Great. Yifan?
Hi, my name is Yifan He, and I'm the CEO and founder of Ready Technology. So we are one of the founding members of the blockchain-based service network. So we basically, BSN basically is, you can, think about that as a decentralized cloud technology. So we, glad to be here.
Good. Robert, I'm going to start with you. So blockchain and cloud computing are two cutting edge technologies that are getting a lot of press today. How do you see these two technologies being connected as a cloud service provider?
Sure. Well, I think they're a natural fit. There's a number of reasons for that. Firstly, blockchain, as you guys well know, the performance requirements of that look very different from traditional IT environments. So in many cases, you need a much more optimized, or at least a setup that's designed for doing blockchain workloads more than sort of traditional IT workloads. So that means that in many cases, the existing deployments that companies might have are going to be a poor fit for a blockchain type profile in terms of performance. So that's one reason. The second reason is many of these solutions rely on at least an element of decentralization, right? And if you're talking about public blockchains, then really decentralization is important. But even private blockchains usually want to be distributed, at least to an extent. So if you're using cloud services, it's much easier to be geographically dispersed because you don't have to physically maintain each location, right? So you can be at your laptop and you can decide to deploy across 5 locations, for example, around Asia Pacific. And that's something you could achieve in the morning and then go have lunch. You try doing this physically if you had to set up all those locations yourself, right? So the cloud is clearly beneficial when you're talking about the need to decentralize the blockchain, and that's something that goes hand in hand, right? And then the final thing I would say, to leave points for other people as well on this, is scalability, right? So the other thing, of course, is that blockchains, one of the benefits of going to cloud is that you want to be able to scale up and scale down your workloads. And you can, of course, achieve that much more easily on a public cloud basis than in a private environment. And so I think the combination of those 3 things makes public cloud or cloud services and blockchain as a service in particular something that's really interesting for a lot of end users, right? And I think that's why we've seen such a high degree of or high percentage of blockchain infrastructure ending up on public cloud service providers. These are the kind of some of the main drivers I think that sit behind those decisions.
Ken, you talked in your introduction about doing some consulting work and security work in both cloud computing and blockchain. Can you also talk a little bit about how the connection between the two?
Yes, so lots of blockchain startup or small companies, they run their service on the AWS or GCP cloud, right? So especially the UI side, and some of the node service also like especially the staking node, right? If it's a proof of work POW using ASIC, so that cannot be really in the cloud so far. But if it's a lot of now staking node, it's running on the cloud, and also the data analytic tool or platform for the blockchain is also running on AWS. But in terms of centralized AWS cloud, it certainly can benefit from a little bit of a decentralization. There is the effort in terms of decentralize the storage, right? The IPFS, the Filecoin, and also decentralize the computing power. There's some startup. It's not the mainstream yet, but gradually, I would say it will be complementary to centralized, although it's distributed, but it's still centralized, meaning the administrative centralization, not really the technology like distribution. It's fully distributed, it's good, but still you have the centralization issue, right? So with the public blockchain, there is some incentive mechanism that can be leveraged to enable decentralized computing, decentralized networking, and decentralized storage. So I think both blockchain and public chain, they have some synergies. One cannot really fully replace the another, but they can work in tandem. That's my my general idea. Thank you.
So Yifan, we've kind of gotten the cloud computing perspective on the linkage between the two and the connection coming from the blockchain side of things. How do you see the connection between the two?
You are part of right day. We are not in blockchain industry. We are in the cloud industry. Okay, so actually, from BSN's perspective, or Reddit's perspective, we actually consider blockchain as a new type of operating system. So it's basically just like a Linux system to AWS. So it's like AWS. It's a cloud environment, but when you run applications, you don't run on the open stack. You run inside operating system. There's traditional cloud, they have like a Unix-based, right? Or the Linux system and the Windows NT-based. So that's basically the runtime environment, the operating system. But BSN, in the beginning, I mentioned the BSN is like a decentralized cloud, right? Cloud services. So blockchain inside on the BSN is the operating system. Then what kind of application you can build with blockchain as an operating system is a decentralized application, right? Usually on AWS, the traditional cloud, you build it's basically centralized system, or we call that private IT system controlled by one company. The decentralized is the same application, but controlled by multiple parties. So that's the only difference. But remember, when it becomes decentralized, it's no longer just one single instance. It's multiple instance, and you need to link them together. It could be on different clouds. Then the operating system changed. Then you need to somehow link them together. So a person, I think, from the cloud and the blockchain, it's just like a cloud services and the Linux. So right now, because right now we still don't consider blockchain as operating system, so that's why it's on top of operating system. You need to install it into a Linux. But trust me, in 5 years they will merge together. Then there will be a new type of half Linux, half blockchain nodes, and integrate together. So you just install into a cloud environment, and begin to easily to build entire decentralized applications. Yeah, that's a future. Also, I always mention, I don't like the blockchain technology. It's one day it will be called something else. Then that technology will become mature. Right now, it's basically a banking system. So big ledger, why a supply chain needs a big ledger.
Okay, good. So Hazem, as a cloud service provider, what are the trends that you've observed with your customers? What are you hearing from them with respect to blockchain technology?
I think the primary trend that we're seeing with a lot of the customers is that they're on this fast pace to both data modernize and data transform at the same time. And that's presenting them with a lot of challenges. And what they're finding in one of those biggest challenges that they have is how do they take all this information that they have internally and share it in a secure fashion across multiple entities that previously only existed within the same organization, but now it's spread out across not just the country, but on a global scale. And not only that, how do you share and exchange information in a method which doesn't compromise you internally, but more importantly, creates a process where everyone's essentially confident that they're reading the same data. And I think that's where the conversation is very interesting. Rarely do we see people approaching us when it comes to blockchain, talking about essentially the technology itself. They usually approach us saying, we're in industry this, we're in artifacts, we're in shipping, we're in logistics, we're in finance, and we need to do 1, 2, 3, 4. And I think that's where the trend is kind of coming from, is that while they've started shifting some of their existing IT assets and solutions and applications and modernizing them and transferring them, they're realizing there's this wall that they're hitting in terms of information exchange, trusted information. And I think that's what's really driving them. It's really just business requirements that allow them to come to us and say, I need a solution for this, and I believe blockchain can solve it for me.
You're with AWS, right? The big global leader in cloud computing. We'd be interested in understanding what what trends you've observed or what you're hearing from your customers with respect to cloud and blockchain.
Sure. Actually, fortunately in AWS, we have a very diversified portfolio of customers where blockchain protocols customers will reach out to us so that they can scale out their nodes to make sure that the network is reliable, the protocol itself is reliable and secure, And at the other hand, the BS developers, the enterprises, start company also come to us to say, how can I time to market to faster development? How can I have more blockchain as a service? they run their own nodes, whether it's kind of like a more blockchain as a service, they can rely on us. So that is actually, I totally agree with Yifan that somehow that the DApps developers, the blockchain developers has to kind of like a abstractions of a blockchain execution environment. Somehow it's just like an OS database. So this is how the customers right now is coming ask us, or they want to roll out their application as soon as possible, and then relying on our scalability, our efficiency on how to run distributed computing nodes.
Robert, you have an international network of partners, so you obviously have exposure to markets around the world. I'd be interested in hearing what you're hearing from your customers, or trends that you're seeing with blockchain, and particularly if you're seeing any trends that are different, say in Europe or Latin America or Southeast Asia, based on the region.
Sure. Difficult to, I mean, there are different levels of development between the different regions. But kind of before I highlight that, I think that what we see is that the fastest growing sector that we see are sort of Web 3.0 infrastructure providers who are looking to abstract away a lot of the complexity of setting up blockchains, right? Or applications and solutions on top of that. So that's definitely something that we see. We see quite a few emerging providers of that who are looking to set up these systems, and projects in the blockchain space are looking to outsource the infrastructure piece now. So a lot of companies are changing, or projects are changing from having to do all the infrastructure piece themselves. That's how they used to do it, to actually not even going to cloud providers, but actually going beyond that and going to Web 3.0 infrastructure providers who give them an SLA, and then they just basically completely abstracted from the infrastructure. So I see this as a maturing of the sector, because you essentially have a specialization happening. And then in particular for ourselves, we see a lot of demand from those kind of companies, because we offer decentralization, true decentralization in the infrastructure. Because if you look at like some of the problems with the cloud services, which is what I think Ken was also talking about before, is that if you have like 60% of the Ethereum validators in a single provider, that's not decentralized anymore, right? So that's a problem. It's not. It's like me saying I need to send a letter to Tokyo, and I have 5 couriers and they all get on the same plane. That's the same level of security you have. You don't. At the one hand, you have 5 couriers, but at the same time, they're all using the same plane. So if you have a problem with the plane, you didn't diversify. So I think, again, with the maturing of the blockchain, I think that especially the people that are specializing in this, like the Web 3.0 people, they're seeing that and they're saying, oh, we need to diversify full stack. We need full stack diversification. So that means infrastructure layer, jurisdictional, like they're looking at it like in 3D. So they're saying we need full decentralization on all aspects to give us the most robust solution for the customers, which is, makes sense. So for us with our model, with the partnership model, they get that because every single cloud is essentially autonomous from a legal perspective. So that's interesting. And they just, as they expand, they're looking to diversify the infrastructure layer as well. So I would say we see these emerging sectors, we see specialization happening in the blockchain, and to be actually lower the barrier of entry for other people. And then we have this kind of, I think, increasingly sophisticated approach to looking at decentralization and things like this. And they're also getting much more sophisticated around price performance and things like that, and analyzing this and benchmarking and going beyond list prices and things like this, and looking and understanding what's my cost per transaction, for example, like to that kind of approach, where they can sort of abstract away the specifics of a VM or this, that, and the other, and they're actually looking at delivered cost, right, at the end of the day. So yeah, I think those are and in terms of regional differences, the US obviously and Asia, I would say, we've been leading, and then now we see a lot of interest in the Middle East, and Hazem obviously can say more about that, but also in Europe as well. So the last year, there's definitely been a big uptick in Europe in terms of blockchain and blockchain adoption. Yeah.
Good. Ken, I know you work a lot in the security space. So security and privacy are often considered to be two of the leading challenges with cloud computing. Do you see blockchain solutions helping from a security standpoint, based on your work that you're doing with customers?
So it's basically have to view it from two different aspects, right? Blockchain do have the security properties, especially from the immutability perspective. So once the data is on chain, it's immutable because it's digital signed, it's put on chain using the consensus algorithm. So that's a good security property of the blockchain. If you leverage some privacy preserving technique such as zero knowledge proof, ZKP, or smart secure multiple party computing or homomorphic encryption, some of the blockchain transaction can also be encrypted on chain. So that's as a good aspect of the blockchain, but that's not the whole picture, right? There's so many hacks on the blockchain project. This year actually is worst of all the previous years since blockchain exists. So we already have like $3 billion US dollars lost because of the security breaches, right? Last year, the whole year was 2 billion, was also a record, but this year is bypassed last year. So we actually have a book published by China Machine Press in 2018 on the very comprehensive blockchain security component, including the consensus node, the wallet, and the other aspect, the node security, and also most recently, actually last month, we have another book also published by the Wiley publisher on the metaverse security. That's why I was invited by Busan municipal government talking about metaverse security also this afternoon, actually, in Busan, exactly the same topic. So thanks for the question.
Good. Yifan, can you, sorry.
I would like to add a little bit here. So just not as I think everyone here is just in the beginning of this talk also mentioned about blockchains and cloud technologies actually is complementing on each other side. And security and privacy as well is here also have the same shape in the cloud industry that during these 2 years, I guess, trusted execution environment actually is taking shape in the cloud industry, where in AWS we have natural enclaves, our own customizations on these things, so that even the memory in use are protected, which is usually few years before we are just always talking about encryption at rest, encryption in transit, but right now the whole industry is talking about whether the memory in use, that how they can protect it, running on a sandbox environment, on a secure enclave. This is, I think, also blockchain industry is one of the major players to influencing or impacting the cloud industry to getting the momentum to be here right now. I think there's also this space is also kind of like keep increasing lots of industry focus on this. I think in the coming months and coming years, not just only us. I think the major cloud providers is actually doing a lot of innovations here in this space.
Yeah, I agree. Like Intel also has SGX. I think it's leveraged by IBM Cloud. Ali Cloud is also using the TEE. I think the same as AWS. AWS also has a quantum ledge, kind of it using some the AWS Cloud HSM together with key management services. So yeah, so some of the technology is leverage what the initial innovation was from the blockchain, right? As an impetus to the then it's implemented in the cloud. So I agree. Thanks.
So Yifan, a question. Yeah. So sorry. Go ahead, Robert.
No, I was just going to finish what they were saying as well, that I think the general theme here is that cloud services, cloud service providers, what they can do is lower the barrier to entry and accelerate the adoption of new technologies. And that's really what we're talking about. So with security, with the SGX or the SME from AMD, which is what we were hearing about in terms of those services, those actually anybody who goes out and buys a new generation server has them baked in, right? But it's about the implementation then that goes on top of that in terms of having an end-to-end environment that can deliver that secure service. And that's where a cloud service provider can come in and help a customer essentially embrace that technology earlier.
Yifan, I want to go back to one of the points that Ken brought up earlier about security and hacks that have made a lot of news lately. And I think Ken mentioned $3 billion hacked. And I think at a high level, when someone who's not very familiar with the technology reads about that, it makes them nervous about blockchain technology. They hear, cryptocurrencies being stolen, wallets being hacked. How would you respond to that if someone were to say to you, look, I read about this in the news, blockchain sounds very scary, and I don't want people to steal my money?
Deposit your money into a bank, please. I solve the problem immediately. Okay, so
agree. But most people connect cryptocurrencies and blockchain, and that leads to hacking. And so, how would you address the whole security aspect of blockchain?
This is actually pretty deep between a public IT system and a private IT system. Okay, for example, bank is a private IT system controlled by a bank, and it's in a closed environment, which means, if you want to hack HSBC, you don't know where to go actually, because it's closed, you cannot find, the access point. They basically, close all the doors. So, which doesn't mean the system is secure. It means you just couldn't find the weak point. And the public IT system, most of them is open source, it's public, everybody have access. So that's why it's easier to get attacked. Okay. But remember, because it's also a public IT system, everybody can attack. So after a while, so it will become much stronger than private IT system. So it's not like a banking system is more secure than Ethereum. It's because Ethereum it's transparent, it's open, everybody can have access, everybody can read the code. So, but the banking, it's the closest. But also from the cloud, the blockchain perspective. Right now the business model is very simple. It's basically a decentralized bank. Then you put your money there. Then it's got stolen. Like that. But for a decentralized cloud service, in a big picture, it should not only it's a cryptocurrency business. It should have all kind of business there. Most of the data you put onto this kind of public IT system, it's supposed to be transparent. It's supposed to serve in a more, transparent way, or people much easier to share data, stuff like that. For the data you don't want to put out there, put in your private IT systems, make that secure. So it doesn't mean you need to put the data is, you worry about it being stolen to a public IT systems. Remember, we always, insist in the future, in 10 years, for any IT manager, when they design an IT system, there's two sides of environment they can choose from: private IT system, public IT system. So then, some of the data is in the private, some data is in the public IT system. That's based on your decision, of course, also based on your understanding of the security of each type of IT systems. So I don't worry about that. It's like, you have home, you always home, but you still need to go out. Go out, you could hit, you could get hit by a car. You say, okay, it's too dangerous. I don't go out. I just stay home. So it's it's really depends on your business model, because right now the blockchain, especially public chain, it's built for cryptocurrency. Okay, so people say, oh, it needs to be fully decentralized, stuff like that. There's an exchange like last month, like $600 million dollars, but on their own chain, and in 2 hours they make a bunch of phone calls. The whole chain is shut down. Okay, then everybody say, okay, it's not a public chain. It's actually a permission chain. Actually, I agree with them. Because it's set up like that, they in 2 hours they can shut the whole thing down and saved $500 million worth of cryptocurrency. They saved that. Okay, that's security. If you truly want the decentralized, everybody lost all the money. Okay, so really, it's what the security need to fit in the business scenarios. The best way for business. So that's why in the future you have this fully decentralized, you have private decentralized, you have totally private. Choose which one you want. Okay. If you want to get go out and running on the highway, if you need go there, you could be very likely to be hit by a car. But if that's your business, go there.
Okay. Good. So let's shift a little bit and talk about growth and mass adoption. Relative to cloud technology, blockchain is really in the early part of the development phase. Hazem, a question to you is, how do you see cloud services and cloud service providers being able to help drive the mass adoption of blockchain technology?
The first step, I think, to drive adoption is just education. You really have to work and help people understand what it does and what it doesn't do. I think the number one question we get asked once we have the blockchain discussion is, where's the cryptocurrency? We're like, well, this has nothing to do with it, right? And I think that's really the first step is just getting people educated, understanding, and more importantly, giving them access to the tools so they can try it for themselves. And that's really done by having local cloud providers that are providing these services as efficiently as possible, right? We look at the cycle of building an infrastructure, and we need to find ways to reduce the headache on people, and let them know that blockchain in itself isn't enough, right? They still need their applications, on-chain and off-chain. They still need platform as a service. They still need infrastructure as a service. But it's really just kind of education, is just over and over telling people, this is how you do it, this is where you use it, this is what it's for, and just kind of repeating it over and over and over until they kind of figure that part out. And then we need to provide the tools for them to quickly adopt the technology. If somebody has to go out and hire a team of 3 people just to deploy their infrastructure, I mean, it's a non-starter right away, right? And I think that's what we need to focus on. And how, what is the life cycle from people getting the idea to fully adopting it, and just finding steps along the way that just reduces the headache on people to quickly adopt.
Robert, would you agree based on what you see in other markets?
Yeah, I mean, it is at an early stage, and this, like the previous discussion we were talking about, like the sort of open versus closed, etc. These are all debates that are kind of early stage debates because people still don't understand the technology. So I think that this will mature, but we do see, I think we are reaching an inflection point for enterprises and mid-sized companies to start adopting blockchain solutions for sure. So we see actual real companies in inverted commas looking at blockchain as a way to solve some of the problems that they have. But it's like any technology, they need to kind of have a problem. So it's like, a solution seeking a problem sometimes early on, because people have this cool technology and then they run around trying to find, well, what are we going to use it for, right? Whereas now, actually, you have a pull coming from the companies where they have some problem, and now there are mature enough, proven solutions that are happen to be driven. It's incidental, right? To them, it's incidental, or it should be incidental. Yeah, it uses the blockchain to deliver that solution, but actually, what matters is the value proposition to the customer, right? So I think that we reached the stage now where we see enterprises and across different sectors like manufacturing, logistics, all kinds of sectors looking at blockchain-driven solutions as a way to solve some of the problems that they have, particularly coordination problems between customers, right? So and we actually see companies now building solutions where they're coordinating using the blockchain, and they're using encryption and technology such as the SGX that was mentioned before, or SME from AMD, to actually create a secure environment in which that data is exchanged, but no participant can actually kind of get the data of the other industry participant. So there's some really interesting things. So firstly, we see companies adopting blockchain individually, and then I think the next wave will be industry coordination. And there's a huge amount of value that can be released through industry coordination. I'll give you one example because that just sounds like very abstract. So in the insurance industry, they have a problem that's called double claims, right? So somebody might have insurance and they, for whatever reason, their insurance policies overlap and they claim the same thing twice across two insurance companies. Now, in many cases, they just do this because they think they can, because they have two policies that happen to cover the same thing. It's actually against the policies, right? So the insurance companies end up doubly paying out on a single event. So that breaks all their statistics, of course, because they do everything based on there are so many car accidents a year. They don't expect to pay out twice on something. So currently, they don't really have a good way of kind of deduping, right? That because they don't want to give each other's customer details. And there are companies now that have, same in the healthcare industry, same in all different industries, an ability to kind of do secure data exchange so that they can start eliminating these problems. So there are many coordination problems in industries because of the competitive tension. They're unable to do that. And as all the people at this around this table, virtual table, know, the point of blockchain is you can engage in trustless transactions securely, right? That's the whole point of it. So that's something I think we'll see as the next wave. But the good news is today we see companies looking individually, I think, at blockchain solutions for like real life IT and business challenges that they're seeing, for sure. Yeah, we absolutely see that.
I totally agree with Robert, but from a AWS, a cloud service provider endpoint, that I will seeing kind of like take a little step back when we see why smartphone is kind of like getting so mass adoptions that past decades. I think the marketplace or the app store play a very major role. It improves the developer experience a lot, and then it's just kind of like a lower the barrier of entering the market. And now here, I think in the blockchain industry, we also need kind of like something like that, a very well-established SDK, very well-established protocol, and then a marketplace so that it's taking shape. There's a lot of different decentralized marketplace here, but somehow I think there's some consolidation here that you will see, I think, along maybe 1 or 2 years, that when this also come upon the methodology being consolidated, then we will see the mass adoptions taking up.
So it's interesting. Robert brought up the insurance industry. Ken, I'd be interested to hear from you. Are there other sectors or verticals in your experience where you see the combination of blockchain technology and cloud computing being adopted, and any specific use cases that you're seeing?
So what I see is actually the blockchain company leverage AWS, for example, right, for majority of service, right? It's given some of the centralized exchange. and also the staking service, the smart contract as a wallet, right? All this service is hosted on the AWS or some other cloud service provider. But in terms of the people who have the blockchain and or the cloud service provider who leverages the blockchain service, it's usually the blockchain as service. So they use this as a service provider to the project, so they can leverage, right? I don't have not seen yet the maybe that's David can give more comments. Is the cloud service provider like trying to leverage blockchain technology to extend in addition to blockchain service. Maybe Google has a Web3 lab, but right, but I think it's not. It's really just provide the service, but not really using the blockchain to provide additional service. So,
I think to some point, I think just because we are still kind of in a very early adoption phase, we're now definitely from our background that we are trying to solve the infrastructure, the networking problem, and then to benefit for the blockchain industry. I think this one say, is this kind of like whether we are helping or adopting the blockchain technology, or whether we can kind of like fully having a trust nobody situations? Still not yet. Yeah, that is the sad truth. But I think until we are getting all this solved, as Robert said, we lower all the kind of like the developers, the entry areas, the lower entry point for everybody, so that the innovative ideas can be explosively being incubated in this environment. I think we will get there.
Hazem, any industries that you're seeing in Saudi Arabia or the Middle East where you're seeing examples of adoption?
The first set of customers that have really started talking to us obviously is the oil and gas industry, and these are organizations that are really built upon working with a lot of other organizations. They don't exist in their own little shell, and not only that, even within the organization itself, it's essentially hundreds of mini organizations that have so far been kind of isolated from each other and very independent. So you see this massive discussions on how can we share information across not just ourselves internally, but also externally. It's the first set of customers that we've seen. The second set of customers is the public sector. And as you look across the different ministries across the board, it's coming over and over and again of how do we share information, how do we do that securely, how do we track everything, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So and I think it's the different drivers are different, I guess, on why, but you could see there's this pressure to do more, and they're really trying to accelerate the process, and they're finding blockchain can really service that. So definitely the oil and gas industry and the public sector, and the public sector just across the board, not even the specific services capability within the government, but really just across the board.
Okay, good. So Yifan, I'm going to come to you on this one. So as you think about, you talked earlier on about blockchain technology being like an operating system, and as we see, everyone here has talked about blockchain technology and cloud computing become more integrated together. What do you see as the impact on IT systems of the future in 3 years, in 5 years, as these technologies come together?
Okay. First, I want to emphasize first, when they integrate together, they actually have impact on each other, which means, the traditional cloud services is built to serve, single instance, kind of application, controlled by one party. So with a blockchain, it's a decentralized system. It's a co-managed system, from different part of world, even across different cloud services, which belong to different company. Then how you build one single application on that. So it actually changes the entire architecture of the cloud. Then with more cloud adopting the blockchain technology as operating system, then more industry will adopt the blockchain technology. Like I said, the blockchain technology is so premature; it's only serving a big ledger, to a bank-like system. So they actually the blockchain technology also will evolve. So the cloud technology will evolve, the blockchain technology will evolve, and form. Personally, I still think it will form a new type of cloud services. So then how to, why there will be two types, just like I said, one type serving private IT system, one type is serving the public IT system. Just imagine, not only operating system, database technology. Can you imagine on this decentralized, application, everybody install Oracle? It won't happen. Okay, it won't happen. Even the database technology also will change. So this is why I see this. It's the most important thing is they actually have impact on each other and force each other to adopt, more user cases, different IT scenarios, different IT architecture. So personally, I still think there will be, eventually the internet, like we always talk about, become two layer, public layer serving public IT system, private layer, current internet serving private IT system, but they will coexist. It's really, whoever designing IT systems, it's their choice which way they go. It could be 80% of the data and the processing on the private system and the 20 on the public system, just to share data with their partners. And for some application, it's probably 99% is on public IT system. Just 1% is on private IT system. For example, some public sector applications, government, application, just to make sure everything is transparent. Or, the example I always talk about, lottery systems. You cannot generate a random number in your backend system. Nobody trusts you. Okay, so it really depends on the business scenario. But I think public IT system concept or decentralized application concept will become very important part of the entire IT architecture of the world.
Well, we're just about out of time here. I want to thank everyone on the panel for joining today. Very interesting perspectives on the intersection of blockchain technology and cloud computing. So thank you all for joining today, and thank you in the audience for joining as well. We will see you next time on the next episode of BSN Long Story Short. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.